Liquid waxes have been around for years, but they've really gained in prevalence in the last decade or so. And really, since the advent of fluoro-free race products, they've become almost a standard in racing. Liquids are typically a paraffin-based wax in a solvent. There are some liquids in the industry that aren't wax-based, where the liquid itself is the glide material, but that's pretty rare. The typical thing is to have your wax, just like the solid form or powder form product, in a solution with a solvent. This is where things really get crazy because there's no standard. There are a lot of different solvents for hydrocarbons, and different companies use different ways of putting the wax into suspension. The other thing about liquid waxes is that they don't like to stick to the base very well. Unlike the ironed waxes, they're not going to go into the base. There's no heat involved, and therefore the base isn't going to open up and allow the wax to combine. These are strictly surface applications. And as such, there need to be ingredients in the wax to help it stick to the base. It's not clear to us exactly what companies use what ingredients, and it's really difficult, in fact, to test the durability of these waxes. But in general, most of the stuff that's out there these days is very durable, sufficient for pretty long races, including marathon length races, provided it's used as part of an appropriate system with ironed wax as an underlayer to help adhere the wax through to the surface. Liquids applied alone on a clean base might not last quite as long. Depending on the form of the wax in terms of its solvent and the way it's sold, it might be applied in different ways. Some companies even have multiple application methods. Rex, for example, on this G11 product, has a sponge applicator as well as a spray bottle. In this case, the spray bottle appears to be butane driven and creates quite a foamy mess, and I don't favor it because it puts a lot of wax on the ski. This is another sort of rule of thumb. When we're working with liquids, we want to work in thin films. We want to get that application very uniform and complete, but we want it to be quite thin. I advocate for thinner applications on many of these products because the solvents can often be quite long drying. Let's talk about exceptions. Star and Start both utilize alcohol as a carrier for their wax. Alcohol flashes off or evaporates very rapidly, so these products can be finished within a minute or so of putting them on the ski, and that allows you to work really quickly, and that includes full adhesion. Many of the other products need to dry fully before they're going to stick to the ski well, and so when you hurry up that drying process, sometimes we have the feeling that we're losing some of the durability. Like I said, I like to work in pretty thin applications, and instead of trying to glob it on so that you can really see a lot of wax on the surface, I favor using a shop towel or something similar to apply quite a thin uniform layer. This is going to aid the drying time, and it really does contain sufficient wax to provide good performance. The drying time on many of these is 10 minutes to up to hours if you put it on too heavy. It's really important that we just set the ski aside and let it dry. However, there are shortcuts. You could use a hair dryer, for example, some form of heat. The other thing you can do, though, is to use a fleece, a roto fleece. Most of these liquids respond really well to the fleece, and they are usually faster when they are finished after drying with a fleece. But you can utilize the fleece to help the drying process along. In the case of this Rhody liquid I just put on, it's a pretty proven application. In general, the methods you use to apply liquid wax are going to end up being specific to the brand of liquid that you're using. They're all just a little different. They all have different drying times. It's best to refer to the factory instructions and then to look for additional information from race service people who work with the product and might know some shortcuts. The alcohol-based liquids are some of the easiest. They tend to come in a sponge applicator, and often the front of the ski is dry before you've even got the wax on the rear of the ski. Even still, there's no good reason to overload the layering. One of the nice things about the alcohol-based waxes is since they dry so rapidly, we can finish them immediately. And we can apply a second or even a third layer. Layering these fleeces is an interesting thing. In our testing, we found that pretty much all products work best in 2 or 3 layers, but often we're limited by the drying time and the practicality of applying that much wax. With the Star product or other alcohol-based products, it's quite easy to build up layers, and it also introduces the possibility of layering different products, different hardnesses, the way we might with kick wax. When we're finishing liquids with fleece, it's important to note that there are a couple different types of fleece out there in the world. With any roto tool, any brush, the shorter the bristles or the nap is, the more aggressively it's going to apply energy and heat to the base. A longer nap is going to have a softer hand. Typically, we use this long fleece. In the case of this one, it's a Star 22 millimeter finishing fleece to buff out liquids, and we use it at quite high rotating speeds. 3,000 to 4,000 RPMs gives us really rapid work without a lot of force or heat production. We found that in utilizing this fleece with high speed, we actually maintain discrete layers. So if we want to put a cold product on top of a more lubricious warm product, we can do that and the layer integrity remains intact on the ski. It is important to remember that if you overbuild the volume of wax film on the surface, the skis get dirty more quickly. Wax attracts dirt, dirt makes the skis slow. So you want to really manage your films as you go. It doesn't do to pile on a ton of wax and not finish it completely. But in the realm of 2, 3, or 4 layers of liquid wax, finished really completely with a fleece each time, we have seen advantages to building that layering and even utilizing different products along the way. In some cases, you might want to take your buffed fleece finish and reduce it or break it with a brush even further. Brushing puts a little bit of structure to it, can align it well with the base, and can reduce the film thickness just a little bit in the event that you feel like you've overbuilt. You can see a little bit of dust coming off. All of this is something that should be tested. We haven't found any one best way to work with these products, but we do know that if you end up with too much wax on the surface, your skis will get slow more quickly. If you end up with too little wax on the surface, it might not last, and you might not get optimal performance. So finding the balance is very important. Working with good tools, buffing, brushing with an appropriate brush is really critical to the process.